The diner was nearly empty, save for the faint hum of an old jukebox in the corner and the clinking of dishes behind the counter. Rain tapped against the window panes, the kind of night where only the lonely or the overworked came in. At a booth near the back, a man in a plain jacket sat hunched over a notebook, scribbling formulas furiously while his coffee went cold. To the other customers, he was just another tired traveler. But in reality, he was Adrian Cole, CEO of one of the fastest rising tech firms in the country, a man whose next deal was worth over $100 million. But Adrian wasn't here as himself. He was here as a nobody, slipping into the shadows, testing how the world looked when he wasn't followed by boardrooms or reporters. He wanted perspective, answers to the doubts gnawing at him. Was his company on the right track? Was his latest formula for the deal airtight? Or was he just bluffing with numbers too big to grasp? That's when she noticed. Clara, a young waitress in a faded apron, balanced plates on her arm as she passed his booth. She couldn't help but glance at the notebook spread open on the table. Rows of numbers, formulas, financial projections. She frowned. That's the wrong formula, she murmured without thinking. Adrian froze, lifting his head slowly. For a split second, he thought she was mocking him. But her eyes were sincere, focused, intelligent. "Excuse me," he asked cautiously. Clara blushed, clutching her tray. "Sorry, I shouldn't have said anything. It's just, you've swapped the coefficients here. That projection's going to give you a loss instead of a gain." Adrian stared at her, stunned. No one outside his board of directors had ever even attempted to read his formulas, let alone correct them. "You know finance?" he asked carefully. She shifted awkwardly. I studied applied mathematics at university. Top of my class, actually. But life happened. Tuition fees, family bills, my little brother's medical treatments. I dropped out and took this job. It's not glamorous, but it pays." Her voice cracked on the last word, though she tried to hide it with a polite smile. Adrian leaned back, intrigued. "Show me," he said, sliding the notebook toward her. Clara hesitated, then carefully set down her tray and picked up his pen. With precise strokes, she corrected the formula, adjusting the numbers with quick confidence. Her explanation flowed effortlessly, breaking down the math in plain words that even a beginner could follow. For a man used to polished consultants throwing jargon at him, her clarity was disarming. He watched her, not as a waitress, but as the brilliant mind she clearly was. "You just saved me from making a $100 million mistake," he said softly. Clara chuckled nervously. "Pretty sure your accountants would have caught it before then." Adrian didn't answer. He just studied her, his thoughts racing. Over the next hour, Clara sat across from him during her break, explaining new perspectives on his calculations. She spoke about risks no one on his team had dared point out. She wasn't just smart, she was bold, unafraid to voice the uncomfortable truths hidden in numbers. Adrian realized something. This young woman, stuck waiting tables, had more insight than half the people on his payroll. But Clara wasn't just numbers. As she spoke, she revealed pieces of her story, how she had raised her younger brother since their parents passed, how she worked double shifts to keep their tiny apartment, how she carried a quiet dream of finishing her degree someday. By the time her break was over, Adrian felt something shift inside him. This night, this meeting, it wasn't an accident. The next morning, Adrian walked into his company's boardroom. He wore the same plain jacket, his notebook clutched under his arm. When his executives began presenting polished charts and glowing predictions, Adrian raised a hand. "We're scrapping this deal," he announced. Gasps echoed through the room. Instead, he laid out Clara's corrections, her insights, her warnings. His team was stunned. "Who caught this?" one of them asked. Adrian smiled faintly. "A waitress in a diner." The weeks that followed changed everything. Adrian reached out to Clara again, not as a stranger in disguise, but as himself. At first, she couldn't believe it. But when he offered her a position as a financial analyst in his company, she burst into tears. It wasn't charity, it was recognition, finally being seen for her true worth. Clara accepted. She walked into that office not as a waitress in a faded apron but as a woman reclaiming her dreams. With mentorship and resources, she finished her degree, built a career, and eventually helped Adrian's company secure deals that dwarfed even the $100 million he had once worried about. Years later, when people asked Adrian about the turning point in his company's success, he always told the same story. It wasn't a boardroom that saved us. It was a young woman who whispered, "That's the wrong formula." Sometimes, the brightest minds are hidden in the most unexpected places. You just have to listen. And Clara, who once thought her future had ended behind the counter of a diner, became living proof that even a quiet voice can change the course of millions, if only someone stops to hear it.